If Republicans hope to win the White House again in 2020, they may want to try something other than branding Democrats as socialists. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, Politico has the story from April 12th, using as an example Pennsylvania last year and noting the fact that there was a coordinated attempt by the Pennsylvania GOP to brand all the Democratic candidates as socialist. And as a result, let me get the exact numbers here. The Democrats managed to flip 3 seats in the House of Representatives, 16 seats in the state General Assembly went Democrat that hadn't previously been, and the Democratic governor and U.S. senator both held on to their seats. Bill, it seems like if you're a smart person and you try something in a prototype and it fails, you don't do it again in 2020. But all I'm hearing from Republicans is that whoever gets nominated by Democrats is a socialist, therefore they should lose.
Well, it's not Republicans that are branding Democrats as socialists. It's Democrats that are branding Democrats as socialists. Alexandria OcasioCortez is a Democrat, and so is Bernie Sanders, and so are the rest of the people that are listening to all of this.
You mean they're socialists, not just Democrats?
I'm sorry, I repeat myself. But I do think it is a mistake to brand all Democrats as socialists. I think that's a big mistake because first of all, it's immoral. It's false. It's bearing false witness. If the guy is a Democrat and has not talked about being a socialist, then it's not only a political mistake to brand them as socialist. It's a moral failure. So we'll start with that. Secondly, about a smart person changing their ideas, Scott, what a smart person does is they look at an experiment and then they try to isolate the variables. So we don't know why all of these things happened in this one instance, and one point does not make a trend by any means. I do agree that it is something that is evidential enough to warrant a serious look at it. Taking a serious look at it.
Well, the Democrats in that state, by the way, in Pennsylvania, believe they understand why it didn't work, and that is because the candidates themselves weren't socialists. They were moderates in the terms of the Democrat.
Then in that case, then the Republicans made an enormous mistake and deserve to lose, and hopefully they will learn some lessons from this. As I said, there's a moral argument and a political argument. The moral argument is that not all Democrats are socialists. They are just people with a different way of viewing the economy and solutions to the country's problem, and that's one thing, and they need to be fought on the level of their individual policies. But what this indicates, and I know that Politico is so unbiased that it's just trying to keep an even hand here, but what it tells me is that this is a Brer Rabbit kind of thing, like, oh, please don't call me a moderate again. The split in the Democratic Party is something akin to the split that we saw in the Republican Party 15, 20 years ago when it was really more vocal than it is today. It's still there, but it's not anything like what it was between social conservatives and fiscal conservatives, between very religious Republicans and Republicans that were more open about social change and still pretty much hawks on the economy and defense and so on. The Democratic Party has staked out a position that they, not us, that they are calling socialism because it is. They're staking that position out, not us. And we can use that wedge that they've created most effectively by letting themselves just impale themselves on it and not driving people to false conclusions. In other words, the Democratic Party is going to have to face something in the next election, and they're going to have to face the fact: are they socialists or are they not? If it turns out that they're not, then all of the passionate base of these Antifa thugs and all of these all of these purple hair college students and all of these people who are on fire for Bernie are going to lose enthusiasm, and that's going to hurt them. If, on the other hand, they do go with this socialism thing, then the middle's going to go, and that's going to hurt them. And they're stuck on a rock here, Scott. I don't know how they're going to get off of it.
Well, let's take it to another level, because this Democrat that I was reading in the Politico story in Pennsylvania thought it was just because people didn't believe that the Democrats were socialist. But what if It's really that people do not fear socialists. In fact, if you grew up living in a country that has a very rich social welfare program, a system of programs that have to do with almost every aspect of your life, why would you even see the negatives in a candidate who would stand up and, without using the word socialist, espouse viewpoints that were fundamentally socialist? People aren't afraid of socialism anymore.
Doesn't that negate the entire argument that the author is making? In other words, if people don't fear socialism and the Republicans accuse the Democrats of liking bunny rabbits, where's the harm?
I'm saying the Republicans could waste a lot of time branding Democrats as socialists when a lot of people out there, that doesn't bother them.
But the entire point of the argument that this guy is making is that by calling somebody a socialist when they're not, cause them to lose elections. In other words,
well, that was one person quoted in that article who said that was their theory. Let's take the broader view.
So this entire premise then of this entire discussion is based on the views of one person in a left-wing article on a blog?
No, I'm taking the article piece by piece. So one part of the article has quoted a Democrat who basically said nobody believed the Republicans because the Democrats weren't really socialist. Okay, we dwelled on that for a little while. Now, I'm suggesting beyond
I understand what you're suggesting.
That it's possible that people just don't even fear socialism anymore.
But this again is my point. What the argument is, the argument of the article is that the Republicans basically lost because they accused people of being socialist when they weren't socialist. They lost because they accused people of being something bad when it turns out they weren't bad at all. It's not that they accused them of being something good. It's that they accused them of being something bad. If the American people thought socialism was great, then the Democrats would have covered themselves with socialism tags, whether they were actually socialist or not.
And they're doing that now. As you pointed out, Bernie Sanders and others are embracing that democratic socialism brand. But what I'm saying is, Bill, you may be living in the 1950s when a Red Scare campaign could be very effective. What I'm wondering at this point, based on kind of springboarding off this article, I'm wondering if Republicans calling Democrats socialists is a failed effort simply because people don't care or they don't fear socialism.
I think maybe you're living in the 2010s, Scotty. I think you've forgotten what all of these left-wing economic policies brought us in terms of economic gain and crime on the streets, financial hardships, all of this, all of the loss of our prestige, all of the loss of our military might as a result of these left-wing policies that they never called socialism because they know that the American people will reject that. To say that this is red baiting is to take the position that criticizing the left is somehow an immoral act. It's somehow beneath us. It's like, oh, well, how dare you? There's a lot of things you can say wrong about Joe McCarthy, but one thing you can't say about Joe McCarthy was that he was wrong. He said he had a list of all of these State Department communists. Turns out after the fall of the Soviet Union, he was exactly right. So when I hear people saying this is red baiting, what I'm hearing is, they're on to us. So now we got to do something to appeal to their moral center to get them off of our trail. The fact that the article claims that Republicans made a mistake by calling Democrats socialist is to admit that the socialist label is not a label that people want. And to say that these guys won, the Democrats won, because they were not, in fact, socialists, is to reinforce the point that nobody wants socialism.
Well, let's all hope that that's true. I think that there may be a softening of the public perception of what it means.
Well, there's no question about that, and that's as a result of the educational system. See, this is what too much prosperity generates socialism, and socialism removes the prosperity. Then you're back to having to work for a living again. And this cycle, which appears to be unbreakable, and may in fact be unbreakable, may in fact be built into the human structure. It's happened so frequently, it's almost impossible to escape that conclusion. But certainly that often misquoted, and I'll probably misquote it myself now, but those who do not learn the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them. If we taught history fairly, this would be this would be as ridiculous as trying to elect. Oh God. I can't think of anybody stupid enough off the top of my head. Rob Schneider. Okay, not stupid. Just it's like electing Rob Schneider to the presidency. It's like, I'm sure he's a very nice guy, but nobody would take that seriously. And so if people were given just a straight telling of the facts, no one would take this seriously. And if people were told the facts and they added onto it the personal experiences of the people who suffered under socialism, so that 150, 200 million dead people is not just a number, it's actual people, it's actual families all around the world throughout the history of this nasty, pernicious idea, then you would have the correct response to socialism. But if you really wanted to get rid of socialism in America, Scott, it would actually be a very simple thing to do. The best way you could eliminate socialist tendencies in the United States is to encourage people who love socialism to live in a socialist country for 1 year.
I'm not sure you want that many neighbors there in California.
I've already got that many neighbors in California.
For years,
most of them would be headed overseas to Venezuela or Cuba or even Sweden, which has fallen apart.
For years, Republicans have used Nancy Pelosi as the avatar of what Americans should fear about Democratic candidates. And so, in campaign after campaign, it was, you don't want to elect this Nancy Pelosi Democrat. This isn't San Francisco. This is Berks County, Pennsylvania,
Yep.
And now it seems to me that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the rookie House member from New York, has become the Nancy Pelosi. And I see already a lot of Republicans talking in terms of any Democrat who runs for office and hasn't disavowed Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is in effect a socialist and therefore should be opposed on the grounds of their socialism.
Okay. Two things to say here. The most salient one being, since AOC is the firebrand champion of socialism, how popular is she in her own district right now?
Not hugely. Folks who
not
pay
hugely?
attention to BillWhittle.com have discovered
what are the numbers?
That she is not receiving passing grades as far as constituent
what were the
services
numbers?
do. I don't have numbers.
They were 68% disapproval.
Oh, is that what it was? You
Yeah,
have
that's
the
what it
numbers
was.
then. You're
I have
asking
the
me a
numbers. I
question
never
to
ask a
which
question
you know
I don't
the
have the
answer
answer to. 68% of the people in her district, according to the research done by you, not me, but that we did on a show not too long ago, are dissatisfied with her as their own personal representative. I don't think I can't think of a place where that number's been parallel. That's an enormous, enormous number in the world of politics, where 2 or 3 percentage points often make the difference between, re-election or election in terms of their popularity. 68% is just shocking. And that is another indicator of what these people are doing and believing. What was the second part of that question? Do you remember?
So to sum up both parts of it into one question. You're advising the Trump campaign.
Oh, I remember.
Do you tell them?
No, I remember. I got
go
it.
after Joe Biden and call him the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of the future.
No, I remember what I wanted to say. So the first thing is, even amongst her own super liberal constituency, she's 7 out of 10 unpopular. It's unheard of. Now to your question about advancing strategies. To accuse them, to run campaign ads that say that Joe Democrat, who's running in Ohio, is an AOC socialist, is a catastrophic mistake, and I think probably Pennsylvania shows us that. What is infinitely more adroit, infinitely more successful, infinitely easier, and we will never see because we cannot seem to understand the basics of how this game is played, is for the Republican challenger not to accuse the Democrat of being a socialist. The response is to ask the Democratic candidate what he feels about the support for socialism among Bernie Sanders and AOC in their own party. How do they feel about the support of socialism in their own party? You don't start with an accusation, you start with a question. If the guy says, I'm dead set against it, fantastic, you can say, that's great. Now we're just arguing about the best way to make America rich and safe. If they say, I think there's some merit to it, or give you any other answer other than I'm not in favor of it, then you can go at him as a socialist. Then you get to trot out 200 million dead people and all the rest of the catastrophes that have followed. But it's a much, much, much better political strategy, and it nevertheless In fact, it's much more effective because you're not falsely accusing somebody. You are making somebody on the Democratic Party make a choice, make a decision. Part of your party is way out here, and the other part of your party is more or less mainstream as we've known it for 200 years. Which one do you support? And if they try to give you a political L, I think there may be things to consider on you. Just don't let them go. Well, what things do you think you should consider? What aspects of this socialist program that people like AOC have rolled out under the Democratic banner, what portions of that do you support? Well, I don't know if we need to get into details at this time. And at this point, I would say, sir, you're evading the question. And the fact that you're evading the question answers the question.
Well, 5 days a week, we help you all think through these questions. That's the role of Bill Whittle now. It's to pull no punches in our questions and to be able to respond in real time, which is the way you have to do it in the marketplace and among your family and friends. We are excited to be part of this effort that is borne up by not only the contributions, but by the encouragement and the participation and engagement of our members at BillWhittle.com. If you'd like to join that team, Team Liberty as I call it, go to BillWhittle.com and click that Become a Member link. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members for making this possible.